Hello and welcome back to Tatooine and my Battle at the Sarlacc Pit series. I have completed the build for the Phase 3 debris, which concludes the endgame sequence for this toy box. In this video I'll provide a preview of the entire explosion sequence that includes all three phases of the debris field. Phase 1 was for the debris that comes to rest under the footprint of the sail barge. Phase 2 was for the flying debris that occurs during the 10 random explosions, and Phase 3 is the mass flying debris that occurs during the final destruction of the sail barge. I've also added terrain to the map to increase the distance that the escape skiff travels, provided a full 360-degree camera view of the explosion sequence, and streamlined the logic for the extendable plank on the stationary skiff, all of which I will also cover in this video. My next video will focus on the build for the Phase 3 debris itself, but let's first start with the preview. And that is the entire endgame explosion sequence for Jabba's sail barge, including all three phases of the debris field. With the endgame sequence complete, there are many options to create gameplay that leads up to the destruction of the sail barge, and since this is a unique design, the gameplay could really take place in any era of Star Wars, including a Return of the Jedi themed gameplay, or clones versus droids, or Mandalorians versus stormtroopers, or even a PvP capture the flag style gameplay. Aesthetics and personal preference aside, I think the thing that I am most proud of with this build is the ability to reset and replay it multiple times without having to exit and reload the toy box. Alright, one of the things I decided to do was to increase the distance that our escape skiff travels during the final sequence off in this distance here. So in order to do so, I've added an additional row of terrain so I can extend this path so that the skiff is further off screen of the camera view. So I'm going to replace these two corner hills here and delete these out, and I'm going to grab this terrain gap here. I've already set my theme to Tatooine. I'm going to rotate it around here 90 degrees. I'm going to fill in these two open spots where we removed the previous terrain pieces. And that will get us set up to add another row of terrain here on this side of the map. So I'll come over here to this left hand corner and I'll grab this smooth terrain slope number 5, place it back down, I rotate it around 90 degrees, and I'm going to put a row of these along this edge. Little trick I learned from watching Professor Toybox videos. If you're short on memory and you're creating a map, you can reduce your memory usage by using a small number of terrain pieces just oriented in different ways. You can still come up with a very impressive looking map. So you can see how I'm just rotating these around and moving along this edge using the same exact piece that we've already used, so it's a minimal hit on our memory. And then this last one, we'll slide it up here, not quite that high, halfway back down, and that'll fit right there. Alright, I'm going to come under the hills here and I'm going to pick up this long flat terrain block, place it back down, and I'll move over to the flat terrain block, and in this additional terrain, this is the only new piece of terrain that I'm introducing, so still not too big of a memory hit. And then we'll go back to our long flat terrain block, come over to this corner and place it under there to fill in the gaps. So that gives us a nice addition to our terrain. Kind of gives it a nice finishing look as well. So you can see how that looks. Gives some downslope, a little bit further, more of a downslope from the main terrain height of the central area of the map. So now I'm going to come down here to my path where it ended, and I'm going to add additional path points. I'm going to add 4 more points following the terrain gap there to the left. So it's the Y button on my Xbox One controller, or the plus symbol. So that when I hit that, it'll give me an additional point here. And I'm just going to kind of aim through this gap. And I'm moving up a little bit just to make sure that the bottom of the hull of the escape skiff doesn't drag through the top of the sand dunes here. And I'm just kind of aiming for that gap that goes downhill. So that will be a second, can move it back down a little bit. That'll be a second path point. Doesn't have to be exact to where I'm placing. I'm just following the slope of the terrain here. This will be a third path point that I'm placing. And then this will be the end point. This is the fourth additional path point that I'm extending the path for the escape skiff. And then I'll take it a little further off screen, particularly as the camera's panning around the scene of the explosions. So the properties, I'm going to set the speed modifier on all four of these additional points to 200 to match the speed of our previous endpoint. That's 2, that's 3. And that's the fourth additional point that we added. And really you can make that any speed as you want. Make it as fast or as slow as you want. So that's the new path. It'll kind of snake around those sand dunes and off-camera view. So that's what that will look like, and I think it finishes off the terrain on that side of the map a little bit more. Alright, I decided to go with a 360-degree camera view set to a path. So I've set up a series of blocks here for my spacing. I placed a locator here for the camera target about dead center of the sail barge, and it's one spot up from the top surface of the sail barge. And I'll go ahead and do a new locator connection and hook that up to the camera that I've already placed. And now I've used these basic blocks as spacers, so this long block, I've centered it on that locator for the camera target. And from the top of the sail barge, I've gone up 3 spots, 3 blocks. And I've placed that there. And I've added 11 of these long blocks in all 4 directions. So 11 in that direction, 11 in that direction. And then for proper spacing, I added 2 square blocks here on either side of that central long block. And then gone back to the long blocks and placed 11 in that direction as well as the opposite direction. So when we place our path points around this, we'll have a perfect circle. I'm going to grab my camera here. I've elected to start and finish my camera view here facing the bow of the sail barge. I tried it from a couple different directions. I just happen to like this one the best. So I'm going to place my first path point right in the middle of my path creator. That's where we'll hook up the camera to. And these blocks give me a target to aim for to place my path points. And when we hook it all up, it'll make a perfect circle. So we only need to place 3 of these, because the last one we don't need to bring it around, because we'll, in the properties, we'll set the looped. So we'll set this last one, and this will be our last path point that we place. I did not do any speed modifiers on these path points. Alright, with those placed, we can get rid of our spacer blocks. We don't need them anymore. So go ahead and delete all those, and I'll fast forward back to the camera. Actually to our path creator here. So we'll go to its properties first. Active is going to stay on. And I'm going to adjust my speed to 300, which is the maximum for the path creator. Looped, I'm going to turn on to complete the circle, and auto start objects when connected, I'll turn that off. Alright, now we need our logic connections to turn on the camera. So our logic gate that starts the explosion sequence, this is the key to everything. Whenever your gameplay finishes, it'll input to this logic gate, which will start the explosion sequence and start the camera view. So on this logic gate, I'll do new logic connection on output. Come back up to our path creator. And we'll do a reset and play. It's the same logic we've been using on all of our paths. Now I need to come back to that same logic connection and tell the camera to turn on. So back to our logic gate that controls the explosion sequence, and again, new logic connection on output. Come back to my camera and we'll activate it. Alright, now when we want to replay the game, we also need to reset this path in the camera. So we'll go to our master reset logic gate, which is the down blue arrow, and I'll do new logic connection on output. And we'll come back to our path creator and do a reset and stop. There we go. Alright, so pretty simple logic for that. Now we can hook up our camera. I'm in the wrong menu. New path connection. And we'll hook that up to the toy box path. And now we can adjust the properties of our camera. So I'm going to leave that off. Player viewport, I'm going to choose all players shared viewport. That always just seems to work. Glow through, I'm going to turn that off so you don't see Jabba glowing through the sail barge. Camera target, let's switch that to the connected locator. And then toy box path, I'm going to do a speed modifier of 300 on that. I don't know if this makes any difference. I put my orient along path to on, and then movement style one way and stop. If you want, you can leave it on loop and the camera will just continue to loop around the scene until you hit your escape button on your controller. I decided to go with one way and stop. I experimented with it both ways. So that sets up the camera for a full 360-degree view of the explosions event. Alright, last thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to streamline the logic here a little bit for our stationary skiff, the one that has the extendable plank. I'm going to match the logic that we've used on all of our other path creators. So in the properties here, I'm going to turn the active to on, and you'll see that move out. We'll get our little enemy, he'll fall to his death. And auto start, I'm going to turn that off. And there goes our enemy into the pit. And I'm going to come over here to this other path creator. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it on, and auto start, I'm going to turn that off. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to our target here, and I'm going to change the logic. I'm going to go to the path creator. When hit, instead of on, I'm going to change it to reset and play. And then we'll go back into our logic menu here. And I'm going to choose the top one again because the other one moved to the bottom. When hit, change it from on to reset and play. Now we're matching the logic that we've already used. That means that the logic that I have in this button to reset, I can delete it all. So you can delete all of the two path creator connections and the two small floor connections. Instead, we're going to use a logic gate. And we're going to use a logic gate so that we can reset this plank when we replay the level. That was one of the things I was missing on this desert skiff was the reset logic when the game resets. So that's our master reset logic gate. So I'm going to pick this up, place it back down, and grab another logic gate here. Now I'm going to come to the master reset logic gate. I'm going to do new logic connection on output. We'll go ahead and input to our new logic gate. And this will control resetting our plank for the stationary skiff. So let's move this up to our desert skiff here so we can make the final connections. So from the master reset logic gate, we input to this new logic gate, and then we're going to output from this to both of these path creators to reset and stop. And that will retract the plank for us. Again, new logic connection on output. And we'll go ahead and reset and stop on that as well. I still want to be able to use my button. Not sure how I'm going to put this into the gameplay, but being able to extend it and retract it seems like a fun idea. So we will input into this logic gate when the button is pressed, which will also retract the plank for us. Alright, so if we've made all the connections correctly, I should be able to push the button here. It'll send a signal to the logic gate, which will send the reset and stop signals to our plank, and it's been retracted. We hit our button, and our plank extends out. We get our enemy, and we can go ahead and push him into the Sarlacc Pit. That's still fun. I don't know why, but it is. And hit our reset button again. So I think that streamlines our logic a little bit, as well as gives us a mechanism to reset that plank when we want to replay the level without having to run up and push the button on the skip itself. So I'm just going to drag this particular logic gate down here and leave it underneath the desert skiff, clear of the Sarlacc Pit there. That way I know it goes with that desert skiff. Alright, so that concludes the content for today's video. Next video, I'll demonstrate how I created the Phase 3 debris. Once again, thanks for joining me, and everybody have a great day.